One word, Mr. Bullard. What should we do?
Vote.
Maylene, what should we do?
Vote.
Julia, what should we do?
Go out and vote.
Dana, what should we do?
Grab your friends and go vote.
Judith, what should we do?
Grab everybody and go vote.
Welcome to another edition to Talking with Kevin and Son, and featuring the people you should know. Hi, my name is Kevin McLemore. I am your show host, four-time published author, speaker, and mindset messenger. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Through the power of our story, our mission is to uplift, share our voices, inspire people, experience perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple: creating hope, helping other people every day. Whatever your objective is, successful people, they create a framework around their day-to-day lives that not only enhances theirs, but sometimes they pour into others. However, today's guests, their bucket is overflowing. Sometimes people destroy you precisely because they don't want to recognize your power, not because they don't see it, but because they don't want to see it and they don't want you to exist. Our guests will talk about the power of your vote. We will put a spotlight on an uncomfortable conversation that needs to be had. This documentary has been featured on a national media platform, probably with the exception of Fox, played at HBCUs, campuses all across the world, United States. This documentary, Dear America, A Letter to a Black Woman, allows you to see through the lens of a woman whose truth and their words of power and their actions and how they affect our democracy that has never been told, not until now. This film explores the rights of resilience, the power of our community, the influence that Black women have made on democracy, only to be witnessed by our elected officials. They got a seat at the table, but forgotten how the train drove them to the station, all by our Black woman. Let me take a minute to pause, and for 1 minute, let you have a little preview of an award-winning documentary that's soon to be had. Ladies and gentlemen, before I introduce my guest, I want to share a little clip from Dear America, A Letter from a Black Woman. We'll be right back.
Well, the first thing I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on. The end goal is, what is it that I want to see different in my community?
Democracy is the soul of our being. It is worth saving because we are worth saving.
If you don't open up your mouth and ask questions, nothing will change.
If I want to make a change in this world, I have to actively find the person who is willing to champion my cause. I can't just complain about the way the world is and then not do something to make it different.
Most of the things that touch people directly are local elections on the local level.
There's a connection. There's a connection to how your garbage is picked up. There's a connection on who gets financial aid and who does not. There's a connection to voting.
The act itself and the defiance of the fact that your ancestors were not even offered this same opportunity is how important it is.
You can tell a lot by what's there, and you can tell a lot by what's missing.
Why do you think this country tried to prohibit most of the people who lived here from voting?
It must mean something. It must mean something very powerful. Take that into account next time you think that you're powerless, that your vote doesn't make a difference.
I don't want to give this country one more way to silence me, so I'm going to show up at the polls.
I beg of you to consider the future.
If your community is under siege or at war, don't you have a responsibility to use every single tool within your power?
I mean, why would I give that up? It's a right.
Representation matters. It matters in every industry, and it matters in our government.
Give your situation a voice.
We deserve and we desire more.
If you want something changed, you need to vote.
The reason we do it is because we know what's at stake.
It is our responsibility to continue to tell the story. With so many states taking different history books out of the library, out of the classroom, it is our responsibility to remind them of the Sojourner Truth, the Harriet Tubman.
What is our North Star? Because the truth of the matter is, as dark and as challenging as it is right now, there's always been a lot of work. This is a moment for us to radically reimagine this country.
Your vote matters because you matter.
I don't think democracy is dead. At least I hope not. But I think if we're not careful, it very much will be.
I have a voice, and you should use your voice. When given an opportunity to speak up and say something, particularly if you have opinions about it and you're looking for change, then you should show up.
I have a vision of America that I desire and I deserve that I'm going to help create.
Dear America, a letter from a Black woman is all about Black women facing hard challenges head on. This film shines a light on untold story of Black women and the pivotal role they played in shaping our national political history. From scholars to activists, this film spotlights the diverse voices of Black women as they work to defend the rights and the future that Americans will face today and the rising threats. I hope this film allows you to honor the contribution of the many women that not only in this stage, but the many women that we'll be speaking to across this globe. Today, I am giving them their flowers and not watering the weeds. So our guests are relatable, they're hidden gems, they're living examples of why your vote matters. Let me welcome to our show. I'm going to say them by first names because there's many of them. I'll be here all day long. Britton, Dana, Judith, Julia, and Mei-Ling. Welcome to Talking with Kevin and Son. How you doing, guys?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having us.
All right,
Great,
and
great.
Thank you.
you guys are amazing. Mei-Ling, tell us just briefly, and I'm going to go one by one, how you became attached to this film, this documentary.
Thank you. So I'm from Freedom Studios and the production company that worked on this documentary, Dear America, A Letter from Black Women. And our executive producer, Chanel Barnes McLeod, is the person that put this team together in a way because she was in contact with my partner, Julia Carillas Linares, who's also here today. And they were having conversations over working on a project, and this was the project. She started to talk about how she had done a pop-up museum in Newark. And from there, because she is CEO of Project Ready New Jersey, she does various activations. You know, one of them was the pop-up museum. And the pop-up museum was to educate our youth and families about civic engagement. So she did a pop-up museum and she took it a little bit further by asking people, can you say, Dear Newark? And write a letter to Newark of what you see you want in America. Well, thousands or hundreds of, letters came in. And as she saw the need of people wanting to speak out and not have a place to speak out, she felt that there must be a way that we can amplify these letters. And she calls them a love letter, essentially, to America. And so Chanel is our executive producer of the film. Like I said, she's CEO of Project Ready. And when we started to talk to her a couple of times, Julie and I, we were on other projects. We were like, we don't think this is going to be like a huge, and it is, undertaking, but our passion to tell stories like this that inspire social change and amplify the voices of people that are marginalized or sometimes silenced, because that's one of the things that Chanel talks about a lot, is that Black women are silenced. They often come to the table to give of themselves, and then they are silenced. So with that, I'll leave some space for the rest of our team to talk about it, but that's how it was. We got together with Chanel, we started talking about the project, and we slowly started to include all these other members that are on this call today. For example, our director, Dana Offenbach, after Freedom spoke to a couple of people, knowing that Chanel needed a director, because as producers, we can produce and do all that great stuff, but we need someone who could really put the story together. And so again, I'm going to throw it back out to potentially the director to talk about that a little bit.
And let me say this to our listeners. These are titans when it comes to Black women, Black people in general. When you go through the resume, the reason why I've got 4 other people in here going through the resume. You look at Dana's list, and it's who's who of of awards. She's a filmmaker, director. She's a writer. She's one of the masterminds behind this. When I go to Judith, she's an award-winning entrepreneur, founder of Black Women's Media. And I'm going to tell you over here, I feel like a thorn amongst roses, because Britton is one of the most beautiful men that I've ever met in my life. And he shows up on camera ready. And then, Melanie, I thank you. And I want to thank Larnaz for making this connection, and Julia. So, Dana, when they came to you and they wanted to do this documentary, our political landscape right now, I will say it's a mess. And before I go on, I'm going to say this to our listeners, because I know everyone's going to take a position when they hear this story. Because first thing, we know what happened when Black Lives Matter. They wanted to know why all lives didn't matter, and we're not saying that. We're saying acknowledge the conversation we're having in hand. My grandfather always told me, he said, education was not designed to make you comfortable. It was designed to make you think. And that's all we were trying to do, ladies and gentlemen, here, to make you think and to make educated decisions. So when you listen to each one of these guests, I want you to become a professional listener. I know we're all offended by something. We all have a position, and we've been taught by some things that we need to be untaught by, and we need to be open. And at the end of the day, we need to realize that even though my position here says that if I go by my bank account, I should vote one way. If I go by the opportunity that provided me the life that I had, I have to support the family and their decision to say, reach one, teach one. And so, Dana, if you don't mind, this had to be an undertaking.
Wow, so much to talk about. I just want to start by also saying that all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter. So there was a movement for a reason. But we'll stay on. I've known Mei Ling for a very long time, and I got the pleasure of meeting and being able to work with her and Julia, who are just an amazing, dynamic team. I have thrown my skills behind films, specifically in the documentary space, that I felt were important and in stories that need to be told. I was born and raised and still living in Washington Heights, so my world was always told through a very diverse, unique lens. So I'm really interested in stories mostly that have not been told, that need to be told, that need a voice. When several years ago, I was one of the official videographers at the Women's March, I've worked with Madre, I've worked with Love Michael to tell these stories that most people are uncomfortable talking about, and to get them out, right? Because why do we want to tell stories that are simple? We want to tell stories that are important. And one thing I just want to share with your listeners is that we started this almost a year ago, and July 21st changed everything for us. We started this basically thinking that Joe Biden was going to be the candidate. And you can imagine what happened for us in July. And we were done shooting. So we were actually in the editing room putting this together. And I just want to share that with everybody. And then I'm going to go back a little. I might be a little all over the place, but Julia Mayling can kick me under the table and focus me. But, Chanel Barnes, it's really easy when you come onto a project where somebody has a very definitive vision and a very definitive story that they want to tell. My job was how to make that story interesting. I always say this, everybody has an interesting story to tell, but not everybody can tell it in an interesting way. So our job was how do we take this story that's not been told on film before and wrap it in visual eye candy, as I say, in order to really drive home our points, right? Then also we found ourselves in an editing room at a time that was critical for democracy in our country. And you say, like, my bank account tells me one thing, my heart tells me something else. Like, it isn't even about that right now. It isn't even about political parties. It isn't even about your history of voting. It is about the ability to continue to vote, right? This is critical. So when Mei Ling and Julia came to me, and then I met with Chanel and I saw the purpose of this, even take Kamala Harris out of the equation, it was critical for us to tell this story.
Right. Now, the key thing for many of our listeners, they have not got a chance to watch the documentary. Wednesday, I was at Philadelphia Community College. I was one of few men and got a chance to watch. Two of the featured players, I won't say characters or actors, were on there or on our show, Brenton and Judith. I was brought to tears, I have to be honest. Because when you look at the fact that my grandmother's the matriarch of our family, it's an untold story how women have held not only the household together, they have been the foundation of what every man's success has ever been. But this documentary shows you the foundation and the power and the influence of every single movement of change in our democracy, in our history. It's an untold story. And so, Mr. Bullock, when they approached you, and I'm going to ask Judith next to be part of this, how did this story impact you in sharing your story and what's your responsibility to this story? Because you're one of two men that are featured in this story of men, of powerful women. I know, I'm a man. I said I cried. You were in it, and your story made me cry. How did it impact you, sir?
So, I do want to start off by saying, Mei Ling reached out to me, and by way of that, and I got connected with Mei Ling and Judy, and said, "Do you want to be a part of this project?" And at the time, I, didn't really understand the impact that this documentary would have. And in my mind, and I'll just be very honest, I just thought we were like creating, they were creating a message to like get out the vote. And that, I think that was what it was, right? But it became so much more than that. And between the time that I filmed with them and then 2 weeks later, the political landscape changed, right? And so having seen the film, because I just recently saw the film in its entirety, I also cried and had been moved, and I've seen it now twice in its entirety. And each time that I watch it, I learn something different. To be, a Black son, a Black grandson, and as you mentioned, and you said it so eloquently, women are, especially in the Black community, are all behind every man, every great man, every great young man, every great young boy, and really play a transformational role in their lives. And so for me to then hear, to be a part of this film in a role of an ally, but to hear the stories from Black women across the country who have lived, I mean, when I, and I'm not going to take away from Judith, but when I heard Judith's story, I was, I was, I mean, I was floored. And that's not even the right word, but that's the word I can come to right now. I mean, to
Thank
hear
you.
that and, you know, to see the successes that women and challenges and burdens that Black women have gone through in this country. Uh, and I know my own experiences for my own family who have experienced Black women who have in my family who are still and going through challenges. And I don't think that's something that we're ever going to get away from just because of the way our society views Black women, right? And hopefully that will change, but I think we have a lot of work to do before we can get there. So for me, it was very impactful. It was really life changing, and I keep saying transformational because to hear the stories and to understand the struggles and the barriers and the challenge and the lack of access and resources and support and allyship, right? And so when I saw, to take it full circle, when I saw the film in its entirety, I said to Mei Ling, to Dana, Julia, and Chanel, uh, just how I just feel honored and privileged to be a part of this circle of great, powerful, and impactful women. Between the women who put this together and the women who are actually featured in it. So I'm very thankful and appreciative. And this will be a moment that I will cherish truly for the rest of my life.
Judith, you just got a love letter from another man.
Yes.
Hey,
And that was so lovely.
and I'm glad he set it up that way because this film features Black activists and scholars. You got Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. III, his granddaughter, Andrea Waters King, Latoya Brown, Lindsay Gaynor, Chanel Barnes, and Judith. Now, I have a question. You are now part of history. You're now part of Black history. You're now part of women. Each and every person on here are now part of women in Black history. Your name will ever, forever be remembered. I wrote a quote, my first thought this morning that I shared with my friends, and I think I sent it to Mei Ling. I said, live your life the way you want to be remembered.
Yes.
Now, I have granddaughters. Children being born today, Judith, will see this film. Sons and daughters across the world. The civil rights that I've had in my lifetime. They will not understand what affirmative action is. They will only hear stories of women's rights. They will only hear horror stories about how Black authors, literature was banned. They will only hear stories of how our education is being redirected. And they will only hear the tales of how our laws refusing the rights, the LGBTQ plus community. As a letter to Black women and understanding the power of your vote. And I want to be totally honest with everyone here. This is a bipartisan conversation. We just want to say, we want you to honor the fact of the sacrifice was given for women in general to vote. Black women, it took a long time before we got the right to vote. Being part of this story, Judith, how does it make you feel? And your story is so impactful in this. It's a must see.
Thank you. So I had the opportunity of working with these three women by way of a mutual contact and a mentee of mine, Deanna Harris. She suggested for me to be a part of this project. Even though in its entirety, when I was approached to be a part, I didn't know the impact of the story. Even going through it, I didn't know the impact of the story. And, as Dana and everyone else mentioned, uh, with this coming election, it is the most important story that is being told. And I am truly grateful that I answered to the call to be a part of it. And my story, I don't think, is any different from women, and in particular, Black women. I think we need to have platforms that allow us to share the truth of our experiences. And to Brenton's point, it's a lot of work, but we are not fearful of the work. We are not fearful of the work that needs to be done. And when we have platforms such as the one that Dear America has provided to the women who participated and men, um, and we continue to share these stories, I think it's going to start the conversations that needs to happen in the rooms where decisions are being made. Uh, Maybe I'm being optimistic, or it's my faith, that in my lifetime we will see, the changes, the positive changes that will revert back to, in your case, Kevin, as you mentioned, your granddaughters, they will see a triumphant story, because there are still those of us who are fighting to make the change. So when I had the chance to sit in that seat and I was being asked those questions, I was not prepared for the emotions that were going to be stirred, because the truth is, we face this every single day. This being the challenges, the marginalization, as you mentioned prior to our call, that it's by design, um, where Black women are constantly being celebrated for our magic, and our genius is being used to save communities and companies and even countries. But no one's pouring into us in the same capacity. I don't want to say same. There's there's not anything that's being poured into us on a grand scale outside of what's being taken. And while we glorify the magic and the power and resilience that is in Black women, we must also provide resources and the support in order to amplify us in the work that we're doing, because we are trying to save our communities, and in most cases our families. It's not even the technicalities oftentimes it dehumanizes us, and people do not see us as daughters and wives and mothers and sisters and aunts. We're the beings that will help. We're the support. So I hope in this lifetime, because I have a 3-year-old daughter, that we continue to have these conversations that is able to shift the paradigm of how we are treated in this country that we do love. And now more than ever, with this new presidency, it's going to change the makeup of our country as it is, either way that it's swayed. So I'm truly grateful to be a part of the project.
I'm truly grateful not only that you're part of this project. I am grateful that all of you agreed to come on this show and to spread your message. Julia, I'm probably going to ask you the toughest question that anyone's been asked on here. And this is my personal opinion. It's not a reflection of the film. But when I look at the fact that both sides of the political spectrum solicit aggressively Black women, Black women's group, in order to get their vote. And I said this earlier, and I used creative words in saying that we help them get them to the station. But once they leave the train, they forget how they got there. There's been many times that we have had elected officials that have made promises to our communities and then have abandoned those promises only to come back 4 years later. I tell young people that about education, go to a university that supports who you are, who your culture, It says, why play on Friday and Saturday nights when 4 years from now they celebrate you over the weekend and then they can condemn you with their vote 4 years from there and sacrifice your freedom? Now, Julia, being in this system and understanding the power of the vote, why is the Black women's vote so important to our politicians on both sides?
That's a very good question. And I think that with this film, this is what we set out to do. We set out to go back in history and show historically how women, Black women, have always showed up, right? But what we found was that there were a lot of issues that were coming up, whether it was, infant mortality, crime, domestic violence. And we realized that not only were we capturing the history of the contribution, but also there were all these issues that we feel that, besides being a film, that we wanted to do something beyond just capturing these moments and these important issues. And so we set out to do a policy opportunity agenda. And I think that this is something that is missing. Often we have these politicians requesting the support of Black women in the community, and often they don't come back and provide the need and the issues and address the issues that they have. So we know why it's important, because they always show up. They don't show up just themselves. They show up with their families, with their neighbors, with a whole community, and often impacts, how an official is elected. And so it's time to really look at what really matters to this community and put some action behind it. So what we hope is to collect 100,000 signatures and data and from Black women and their allies. And we want to hear from the community. What are some of those issues? We've been collecting them, and the goal is to then go to the Capitol with an opportunity agenda for Black women. So we hope that everyone who is listening right now can go to www.thedearamericanproject.com and sign up, because we want to hear from you. We're going to make this film something that it's going to be a voice and change for the community, specifically for Black women.
All right. And are Black men welcome in this?
Oh, absolutely. Everyone, Black women and their allies. So that includes Black men, that includes brown people. But we are really going to focus, we've heard Vice President Kamala talk about an agenda for Black men, for the Black men opportunity agenda, but we haven't heard a Black woman opportunity agenda. So we're helping her out. This is this is us contributing and going and taking action. So we have her back. And I know, me personally, I know that this is a nonpartisan conversation, but me personally, I am behind Vice President Kamala. And
I told you were a smart
I'm
woman.
not afraid.
I told you a smart woman. I'm glad you preface it that way, because there are many people in here that believe, and like I said, I attended a screening at Philadelphia Community College, and I was taken back when I heard conversation one. It said that from a Black woman, I cannot vote for a woman, not just because she's Black. I couldn't vote for a woman for the simple fact she's been taught that a man should always be in that position. The other comment that was said, my vote doesn't matter.
Wow.
That was a conversation. And the other conversation is that no matter how I vote, nothing's going to change, so I won't vote. So, Milene, you were my first contact on this story, so I'm going to table this to you. How do you address this conversation?
I think it's time to teach the same again, teach one, reach one, and the conversations we have after the viewings are well appreciated, because then it gives us an opportunity to give other perspective. And hopefully they go back home and do some additional research on how the women now are playing very important roles in politics, in business, in entrepreneurial businesses. And even in motherhood, you have to teach your daughter, you have to teach your son that civic engagement is very, very important. So, when you hear that, you just wonder where they've gotten, well, we know where they've gotten it. Obviously, it's at home. We are raised, I mean, I'm an Afro-Latina, and we are raised to see that mom is always catering to dad. And I think Black women is the same thing. We're always catering to dad and our men. But it doesn't mean that we don't put on a suit and go to work and have a business and do all these other things that we do. So I think it's this movie or this documentary does exactly that. It opens the opportunity for someone like that to say it and feel comfortable saying what they think. And then we can come back and say, but look at us. We were brought up the same way, but we're able to have this conversation, and we want to have this conversation. And we hope that you would give it a chance to continue to talk to others, do some research, and find out why it's important that women vote, Black women vote, that men vote, that sons, your daughters, that we all vote. It's a human right. It's a world human right to be able to exercise a vote and have your voice through this vote heard. So the audience, whoever is listening to this, and you feel that way, you feel like you cannot exercise your vote, whether you're a young man or a young woman or someone who did time, whether you can vote. Just please do the research, look into it, because you can exercise your power to vote.
Can I jump in, Kevin?
Yeah, just go ahead. Go ahead, jump in. I wanted
I
to
just want to
address
back up
something with Judith. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go
just to
ahead,
back
Dana.
up what Mei Ling was talking about also, and I think for your listeners, one thing that we found out that kept coming up is that a lot of people are single issue voters. And I really want to talk about my frustration with single issue voters. We have seen votes go a certain way over one issue. This is about policy. This is about decency. This is about what do we want for our country, and not just this single issue that eats at me at night. I really want people to look at the policy and who we're talking about and the level of decency. The Overton window has shifted so far to the right that we need to start working to bring this back. I don't want to turn on the TV and hear people cursing and as if that's okay. Like, so much has become acceptable that we should be horrified about right now as well. So look at the policy, forget about gender, forget about the party. Like, never in my entire life have I seen so many high ranking officials of one party come out to support the presidential candidate of another party because they understand that our way of life is being threatened.
Right. And I'm glad you positioned it that way, because it dovetails off of Maylene in the conversation that I'm going to direct to Mr. Bullock and Judith here, because they're younger. They have access to things, I mean, to technology that we don't have. I'm going to share a little bit about my life. I'm probably older than everyone here on this panel. In my household, I grew up in a family of 13. I was raised by my grandmother and grandparents, my father's parents. At 18, we dressed up to go vote. My parents, my grandparents took us and watched them when we went through the process until we were able to do it. In our household, my grandfather basically said he didn't care who you voted for, but you had the right to vote. He is 3 generations removed from slavery, so he understands what his freedom is. Sitting in a room full of young people, and when they were asked where they're getting their information, to dovetail off of what you said, Dana, I was surprised on where they were getting their information, not based on facts, based on their entertainment. Social media has played a big part in one, scaring the living crap out of people. It's the reason why they're using it. It's the reason why every billionaire and millionaire are trying to buy up social media, because they want to be able to broadcast and control their agenda. But I don't think young people are buying it. I think they're a lot smarter. And the two young people we have on here, I'm going to ask, where are you getting your information and what's important to you? And I'll go with Judith, and I'll go to Mr. Bullock second.
So that you're right. That is a important conversation that needs to happen. I think I'm right smack in the middle. I fall in a very unique position as a millennial, just seeing the transition of information and data from prior to the internet days to when we had AOL and we were putting in disk and so on. And then, you know, MySpace and Facebook changed, the realm of communication and our degrees of separation. So to the younger generation, social media is a credible platform because based in their reality, it is the number one platform to get quick information. So there are a lot of uh, professionals. Let me use this term for the sake of the audience. There are a lot of professionals, some, coin as influencers or content creators and other things, but they are very well educated in the political system and the political climate of our country and even internationally. And they have been utilizing their platforms to educate the masses. And I think it's extremely important as parents. I have a 19-year-old myself, and then I have an 8 and 3-year-old. And my 8-year-old, he has access to, as much as we try to control it. His father and he still has access, whether it's school or whether with his peers, he has access to the internet. So it is, I think, our job as the older generation to emphasize on what a credible source looks like and continue to educate the younger community as opposed to steering them away from it, because then you're not credible, because from their perspective, they know, right? They know, or we know, because I was thrown into the kids, so I'm gonna just take on that mantle. I'm a kid. No, all jokes aside, I think the most important thing is to have conversations with our younger generations to uh, steer them in the right direction. Because we, like you mentioned before, Kevin, billionaires are they're fighting at purchasing social media platforms because they understand the power that it holds. So we also have to educate and inform ourselves about these platforms and utilizing the platforms to educate. And it could be us, utilizing the platforms to educate the younger masses. And there are so many creative ways to do it, from creating songs and cartoons. That's the way that we used to do it on this television screen. So we just transition that into, TikTok and YouTube and X and Threads, Instagram, Facebook, all of these platforms, LinkedIn, all of these platforms are platforms that we can use and transition information there so our younger generation can, be able to get the right credible sources. And also we have to educate them too. Like, hey, I know you're on TikTok. You need to follow this content creator because they're your peer and they're providing information about our political climate and why it's important to vote and how local voting and even voting from the national scale, how that can affect you directly. So that's my take.
Mr. Bullock, if
Yeah. Yep.
you cannot turn on and watch any programming today without the interruption of what is perceived to be based on interpretation and perspective of the truth. Now, I will tell you, I've watched the ad that that basically positioned one candidate and said that we are redirecting funding to incarcerated people. And this is where the money's going to. Now, one of the things that I've learned, I peel back the layers of our candidates, and I'm saying every single time there's a rally, rally is based on they're going to take over our neighborhoods. I have no idea who they are. They're going to rape and pillage our women and children. I don't know who they are going to do this. We build a wall, and we know that if we build a wall, that somehow someone's going to figure out a way to dig under it. So that's the wrong conversation. But when you hear someone say, and I've never heard a politician say, "Black men love me." Okay, I don't mean to skew this in any other way, but I know this. But I also know in my house, I grew up in a Southern house. I've never heard my grandparents, my grandfather, or any man in my family ever call any woman in our household out of their name, ever mispronounce her name, ever put her down. I do know in my employment, I would lose my job, but we support an individual and a party that dismisses this to be fact, even though there's recordings to be there. And when I sit in a room and women say what's important to them is integrity, character, and the truth. I mean, Coretta Scott King said it to Byron Allen when he started his media company. What is my responsibility? And he said, and she said to Byron, just tell the truth. Why is America afraid to hear our truth, our women's truth? I mean, because this story is fact.
I think, you know, there's a lot of reasons, but and I could go on and on, and I'm sure we all could, but I will say this. I think we know that America has a very, very sordid past and history with the truth, especially with the truth as it relates to Black people in this country. And then when you begin to peel the layers as it relates to Black women in this country. And in my experience, in conversations that I have with people, even sometimes in my community where I live, there's this ideology of, well, and I'm just going to use this for an example for the purposes of the listeners, because I think that everyone can kind of understand this. Slavery happened 400 years ago. Get over it. Well, we can't get over something until accountability and a conversation has begun to happen, and a real conversation, not a conversation that, well, we're doing this. We gave you affirmative action. No. You didn't give us anything. We earned it, and we fought for it, and we advocated for it. So please don't make it seem like you threw us a bone and you did us a favor, because you didn't, right? And so we need to acknowledge the conversation that we need to be having is a conversation about the very racist foundation that this country was built on, and what we are going to do moving it forward to unravel that and take accountability for what happened. That could look like many things, and I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers around it. But what I will say is one of the things that we can do very easily is invest in our education system on a level like we've never seen before, because we know we've spent money on the military like like the money has fallen off the trees. And one of the things we can do, which we are seeing happening, and stop trying to erase the history. It is a hurtful history. And people of color and Black people in this country have to live with their identity each and every day. And we have to live with that history each and every day. We wish we could erase it, but we can't. So what do? We have to find a way forward to live with that history, but then to turn a new page for our children, for our grandchildren, our nieces and nephews, etc. So let's stop trying to erase the history. Let's sit down and have a conversation about the history, about the pain that history has caused, the trauma, the abuse, the hurt, and then let's move it forward in action. And I think that's what this documentary does in such a Again, my word of the day is transformational, because we are telling these stories. These stories are being told of the lenses and the experiences of Black women, women who have lived and breathed these experiences throughout their lifetime and still doing so, and sharing that through their perspectives and their lenses. These are mothers, these are children of mothers, their wives, their aunts, their uncles. They're also lawyers, they're doctors, they're advocate, business owners. So they are the full gamut. They are truly what America is. We want to talk about the melting pot that is America. That is America. That is the American dream. And that dream has to be attainable for everybody. So I hope that answers your question.
That was very eloquently put. When I talk about Titans, the people that are on this platform or whatever, you are at the top of the mountain when it comes to the message you're delivering. Maylene, all right, I want to ask you this. Women, when they see this, all they're going to read is Black women. All right. The message that I got from the documentary is all women and understanding the position of the Black women and how we have positioned and played our role in politics. How does this film, this documentary, and how does the message unite all women, no matter what their race is?
I think that it's the stories. The stories are relatable. I relate to Judith's story, and I'm an Afro-Latina. I was one of the first Spanish producers at J. Walter Thompson. And at the time in the 80s, it was the first, it was number one. J. Walter Thompson was the best number one agency in the world. And when I walked in there, I saw just one of me, Sylvia Maxwell, who was a business manager, Lance, who was a producer, and Jimmy. I mean, I got to remember Jimmy Holland. I got to remember the people's name because that's how impactful that was for me in the 80s, that I was one. So I think when you can relate to Judith's story, whether you're a Latina or you're white, there's some story of as a woman that we've been marginalized. So that's where I think it is a story that can be, I'm not finding the right word to say, but it's a story that you hear from different women, whether they're Black, white, or Hispanic. Yeah. Pardon?
Relatable.
It's
Yeah.
relatable. I'll find the word because
And this document is the ties that bind.
Yes.
This documentary is the ties that bind. Julia, I know you guys are on this whirlwind tour getting this message out. And I know you've all got to catch a plane. And I can talk about this all day long and we can get into muck and everything else. But again, when I look at our political landscape and I look on one side and I see that when I look at how many people are represented on the federal level, the number on one side is 0. The number on the other side is still a single digit 3. Is that we don't have enough women in power in politics. The same way in corporate America, you look at the Fortune 500 companies. I personally believe, and I'll stick my neck out, to say if more women ran companies, we would be a better run country. All right. As far as our industries is concerned, I think we will not be battling on the fronts that we have if more women across the globe were in positions of power. But women have a tendency not to support other women just because of gender itself. So let me ask you this before we wrap up and let you guys go. I know I haven't covered everything, and I think we had enough conversation to make people think, but what's the plan?
What's the plan for the film?
What's the plan for the film, and what's the plan for humanity right now?
I am really hoping that as human beings, we are open to each other, right? I think that there's a lot of divisiveness going on right now. And I'm really, really hoping that we stop and think how we are impacting the next generation. You know, this back and forth dialogue where it's mean spirited. We are setting an example for that next generation. And I think humanity has to take a look at it at themselves. We have to look at them at ourselves and really consider the impact that we're having in the future, whether it's this country or just globally. I think that we need to be open. I also wanted to mention, you know, there's been this whole rhetoric and a lot of the candidates being held in two different standards. And, you know, US News and World Report, there was a report about how when women lead, and this report suggested that countries that are led by women have better socioeconomic conditions, according to experts. So I want people to really think about who our candidates are. Like Maylene mentioned, do your research, not just from, you know, any website. Really look for credible sources and really figure out whether or not these candidates who are you planning to vote for really align with your values, with what you want from them. You know, it was very disappointing yesterday to hear someone who was speaking at a rally refer to Puerto Rico as, you know, a garbage in the middle of the ocean. That, I'm not Puerto Rican, but that struck me, you know, to my core. And if this is the dialogue and this is the rhetoric that we're hearing, you know, what can we expect from humanity? We are all human beings. We have to be respectful and let's stop the lying. Let's really be professionals. The whole world is looking at us as one of the most, you know, powerful countries in the world, and this is how we are behaving. We are to be ashamed.
And I mean, one of the things that we have in the film, we have Romney and Obama speaking in one of the debates, and we did that intentionally because you see the respect that these two men had when they debated. And you see Romney eloquently point his number one, I want to do this. Number two, I'm going to do that. And Obama, you can see he's, you know, respecting his point of view. They shake hands at the beginning, at the end. You see both families get up together, hug each other. That's the America we want to see. And that's what we're hoping that they see, you know, when they see this film, that people get inspired, that there's, you know, hope, that there's kindness, that, you know, we don't want to go back to what it was before. Like Andrea Waters King says, the Coretta Scott Kings, the Martin Luther Kings, they fought for these rights, and they fought also supporting Latinos back with Cesar Chavez. They supported the farmers as well back in the civil rights movement. So that's what we want to see, that this film, you know, brings out more conversation, more kindness, more hope for our country.
And not to say that we can't, you know, we could respectfully disagree. No, in this world, you're not going to agree with everyone. But I think that what's important is that we're able to listen to one another, to really put ourselves in our neighbors' shoes, and other people's shoes before we, you know, before we go out there and continue this divisive conversation and rhetoric. So we really hope that the film brings people together, gives insight to those who didn't know the history of Black women. For me, has been such a history lesson, you know, and I respect women and the sacrifices that they've made, uh, just in general. And I just feel more connected to that community more than ever because it's just been quite amazing the work that they have done in the past and they continue to do even in the present time. So we need to celebrate them. We need to give them opportunities, and we really need to listen to what they have to say, because they have gone through so much, and they know what they're talking about. So I'm hoping that this can provide that type of conversation.
And that's one thing we have to lean on, hope, helping other people every day. I mean, that's my purpose. It's been that way since I was in the third grade. I also want our listeners to remember, our original forefathers didn't look like anyone on this panel. All right. But they were all men with good intentions. They were rich men with good intentions in order to do what's best for the people. They did not have a finite mindset. And what I mean by finite, it wasn't a winner or loser. If this game is to be played the way it is right now, I want you to remember this right now. The only thing that's changed within the last, let's see, 8 years is that we have relaxed gun laws and we have taken away women's rights. I mean, you can brag about all the things you claim you've done. A lot of presidents inherited problems of presidents before them. A lot of people inherit the solutions of presidents before them. If I were to say anything, my next president, balance out the Supreme Court. All right. Let women decide, what to do with their bodies, their life, and let them live with that decision. The other thing is, my fraternity brother, John Lewis, had instituted a right for justice. We've been battling for that law forever, and it keeps getting voted down. No matter which side of the room you sit on, our Constitution was to unite people, not to divide people. People that ran for president when I was coming up were solely based on, their character, their integrity, and truth. I personally believe that, it should be illegal as a presidential candidate to lie or defame or to disrespect another candidate. It should be automatically dismissible. Who am I? I'm just a man. But I will tell you, the titans of this world, the true champions of this world, they're not heroes. They're sheroes. They're the women that are putting this documentary together. And like I said, it's Dear America. It's a love letter from Black women. Don't be confused with your own agenda. Be open. I say cast your vote for humanity over profit. Because at the end, we can't take it with us. And what's the use of having money if you can't do good things with it?
Amen. I hear that.
All right. So I know that some of my guests have to, to hop on planes to go someplace else to spread this message. And I'll be the first man to say, I am so proud of you. And Mr. Bullock and Judith, I apologize for calling you kids because you look like you're still in college. You're just beautiful that way.
Not a problem at all.
Yeah. When you get my age, everyone's young. Okay. Dana, I appreciate you putting together this masterpiece. Maylene,
Thank you.
I appreciate you putting the people together and Julia together to do this. Chanel, I wish you were here because you are such a dynamic force. And I thank iHeart Radio for allowing you a platform to continue this message. And so to my listeners, I want you to think about this. To grow, you must make some mistakes. That's our history. And we've got to move forward. To be confident, you have to address your anxieties. There's no one on this panel you need to fear. We're not coming to your neighborhoods to destroy you or whatever the case may be. All we want is equal opportunity to have the same life that you have. To forgive yourself, you must hold yourself accountable. I say this all the time. We all have people in our history that have done things that are questionable, but we're not responsible for you. In order to move forward, we must focus on the task at hand, not on the past. And to learn, you must unlearn some stuff. Racism has no place in democracy, period. And to exist, you must show up more today than you did yesterday. And to understand the power of your words, you need to share, like, and talk about and promote this documentary, Dear America, Letters from a Black Woman. And if you really have the mindset and you want to truly be a mindset messenger, I tell you this time, vote. All right. Any parting words anyone want to leave to our listeners?
Jules?
Yep.
Thank you for listening. Remember, be kind to one another and be open to new experiences and other people's experiences. Thank you for listening.
All right. With that said, we've covered a lot of information. And at some point, I hope this episode has enlightened you, has educated you, and maybe something or someone said may have touched you in a way that changed the way that you now look at this world. If you like what you've heard, I suggest you go to RMK Productions and Network on our YouTube page and subscribe and follow. And I'm going to ask everyone that's listening to this, and I normally don't ask this, is to share this video with at least for the next 30 days to someone that's important. Go ahead, Julia.
And don't forget to go to www.thedearamericaproject.com. Follow us, sign up so that we can have a concrete and well-rounded agenda to bring to the Hill.
I was actually going to go there first.
Okay.
But
add one more thing.
Go ahead.
Just one word, vote.
Vote.
Just vote. Just vote.
You
Matter of
vote.
fact, why don't we do this? One word, Mr. Bullard, what should we do?
Vote.
Maylene, what should we do?
Vote.
Julia, what should we do?
Go out and vote.
Dana, what should we do?
Grab your friends and go vote.
Judith, what should we do?
Grab everybody and go vote.
All right. And with that said, my grandfather said, when you get to a point that you can help someone else out in life, it's your duty to do so. This is a big responsibility, ladies and gentlemen. When I say reach one, teach one, I'm going to fade to Black and honor our American woman, our beautiful Black woman. And with that said, we're out. We'll fade to Black.
Hey!